Welcome to UC Today. My name is David Dungay. I'm here today with Marcus Schmidt from Intrado. Welcome to the show, Marcus. How are you?
I'm great, David. It's great to be with you. Thanks for having us.
Excellent. Right, so Marcus, today we're going to be talking about the market in general. There's lots of interesting facts and figures to come out of some of your latest research. But before we get into that, why don't you tell our audience a little bit about yourself and the business?
Sure. Again, my name is Marcus. I live right in the middle of the United States of America in a town called Omaha, Nebraska, where it's in the process of snowing today, and we're expecting around a foot of snow, so we're super excited about that. I've been at Intrado for about 9 years now, always in the unified communications and collaboration space, and basically changing roles from time to time between more of a product management focused role to more of a partner management focused role. And today, I'm much more focused in on product management. So I have the privilege of working with a team of folks that leads all of our product management related to our communication collaboration solutions. And that's really what Intrado is all about. If you think about anything related to communication and collaboration, we tend to have a solution in place for that, either stuff that we've built ourselves or stuff that we've done with some of our partners.
Excellent, excellent. So, Marcus, let's look backwards a little bit before we look forwards. The year 2020, probably a year we'd like to all forget. But from a technology point of view, this is the year a lot of businesses they really progressed their cloud transformation journey, and especially when it came to communications. So I'd like to get your perspective. How did the pandemic drive cloud adoption or that transition to cloud from your side?
Yeah, it was interesting. I mean, it's not necessarily a year any of us want to live again, but it was possibly the catalyst that got people to move to the cloud when it relates to communications more quickly than they ever would have been before, right? So that was maybe the silver lining on the pandemic, was it got folks to basically modernize their communication and collaboration infrastructure and move it to the cloud. And it's interesting, as we were surveying, we did a survey of about 300 IT managers in the US and UK, and going into the pandemic, 25% of them had already moved to the cloud. But because of that pandemic, another 23% were planning to go over the course of the next 12 months or so. And only 3%, and I'm not sure what's going on with these 3%, but 3% say they have no plans to move to the cloud. So I don't understand why that is. I would think it would be 100% would be moving to the cloud. But I think the answer to your question is the pandemic really caused people to rethink how communication collaboration works. And the cloud was the answer to a lot of their questions.
Wow, that the 3%. I mean, I'll be fascinated to know. What kind of businesses are they running? It's that's an interesting stat. Okay, so I mean, looking back, we saw March, well, particularly in the UK. It was a different timeline for different parts of the world. But there was the mad scramble, wasn't there? There's the mad scramble. We've got to get home. We've got to get our staff, our workforces set up remotely. But in the later half of the year, we saw that rhetoric really change. Now, I don't know if you agree with this or not, but from what I've been seeing, people are really looking to optimize that experience, that working from home experience, and that might have been through integrations, maybe adding things like voice to Microsoft Teams, and things of that nature. Where are you seeing businesses making these sort of tweaks and adjustments to the communications setup?
No, I think you're spot on. I think that initial rush was just to get everybody online to be able to do video meetings, right? That was sort of the initial thing everybody did. And then after that, they started reevaluating what they either had in place or what they could potentially implement. And you mentioned Microsoft Teams. I mean, they had a phenomenally successful year last year. And when we did that same survey of those same IT managers, 95% of them were using Teams in some fashion. So that's fairly significant, right? And 53% of them actually went to move to adopt Teams because of COVID. So I think you had the situation where people scrambled to get something in place and then took a step back and said, well, what options do we have? And they looked towards their investment in Office 365 and realized that Microsoft Teams was right there, and it became kind of an easy way to go. But to your point about optimizing it, I think they realized once they got started, okay, it's great for messaging, we can do these meetings, but wait, there's these other things we could do too. Like we could actually add in voice capabilities into Teams, and we can start to do other deeper levels of communication and collaboration than maybe they were planning on doing in the first place. So that's the that's the type of thing I think we're going to see going forward. That same survey that we've been talking about, 50% of the customers have added external voice calling already, and another 32% plan to do that in the next 12 months.
Wow. Well, I mean, look, extrapolating that out, Teams they reported 115 daily active users. That was at the end of last year. We're all expecting a number in some at some point in sort of Q1, Q2 time, which we assume will be another huge number for Microsoft Teams. So that is a massive opportunity there. Look, remote working. Have we conquered remote working yet? Are we there?
I think the jury's still out. I think to a certain degree, yes, right? Because of this whole get everybody online, get people used to doing video meetings, get people used to basically having voice over IP calls as opposed to being able to make and receive PSTN calls. But I also think there's still some of it that's kind of elusive, right? I still think that there's a piece of it that even is beyond technology. So you get to the point of, okay, now everybody's working remotely, everybody's working from home. Well, there were collaboration things you could do that were never really easy to do remotely, like all gathering around a physical whiteboard and doing idea generation and idea refinement. I think some of that is still yet to be realized. I know there's some technological solutions that could solve some of those problems, but I don't think people have really started to either embark on those or crack the code on how that's going to happen. So I think there's a next level higher of communication and collaboration that's still going to occur where they try to say, well, how am I going to recreate some of the things that I used to be able to do in person? And then the other little twist on this is, as people do start return to the office, you'll have some people that are in the office and people that aren't in the office. So how do you make sure that the people that aren't in the office are not put at a disadvantage because they can't be there in the office to do that kind of in-person collaboration? So I think we're part of the way there yet, but I still think there's plenty of room to go.
Yeah, I totally agree. Cloud adoption, it's been happening at an absolute rate of knots. What does that look like exactly in your eyes? Where will companies be looking to gain that advantage when it comes to the cloud?
I think it's that moving beyond the basics, right? It's moving beyond the basic video meetings, which that survey we've been talking about, like 98%, I think was the figure of the IT managers that already basically solved that problem. Like, okay, we've got the video meeting problem solved. The thing that they're focused on next is really voice enabling as well as contact center enabling. So they're trying to make sure that everybody can make and receive calls from whatever unified communication and collaboration tool that they use. And then the next one is making sure that their contact centers are equipped to work out of the cloud and to facilitate a combination of contact center agents in a facility as well as contact center agents that work at home.
Excellent. So technology, unfortunately, it's not free. Who knew?
Unfortunately not. Those of us who provide it like the fact that we can actually not provide it for free.
Well, let's talk about some spending priorities then. Where are the top spending priorities going to be for organizations in 2021?
Yeah, this was interesting. We surveyed those same set of IT managers, some in the US, some in the UK, and they were very remarkably consistent. The number one thing, as we've been talking about, is cloud communications. So that's the top of their investment priority list, is continue to invest in cloud communications, which is great as cloud communications folks that look at this industry on a day in, day out basis. The next one kind of surprised me, though. It was hardware. It was hardware like laptops and headsets and things like that. I think companies that traditionally had desktops or some other kind of setting, and they realized, well, I can't be transporting these desktops home with people. Let's equip them with more mobile devices, and then let's equip them with headsets so they can make and receive those calls and do that in a comfortable way. And especially as multiple people in a household work from home and do schooling from home and whatever, you got to have something that is easy versus just talking to a speaker on your PC and having all that ambient noise come in. So that was a surprising one. The third one was security. So not super surprising there. As you get people working remotely, you want to make sure that that environment is secure and all that data is secure and all that communication is secure. And then the last two were conference and huddle room technology and contact centers. So we already talked about contact centers a little bit. The conference and huddle room technology was kind of surprising because I think I wasn't really expecting that, but I think people are optimistic about the ability to return to a workplace, to an office. But when they return, the idea of having a really large space probably isn't going to happen, right? So they're going to have these smaller spaces for people to huddle up. So that huddle room technology, I think, is going to make a rebound here as we go into 2021.
Yeah, Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so UCaaS. I know part of your research, focused on UCaaS. UCaaS is becoming more complex, or the sale is becoming more complex. Why is that so complex for customers, and how can we address that?
Yeah, I think the complexity has to do with just the number of solutions that are in the marketplace. The market has consolidated to a certain amount, but there's still a lot of different solutions out there from companies like Intrado, from Microsoft, from Cisco, from Zoom, et cetera. I think that the difficult part starts to get into when you get beyond the basics, like we talked about before, right? You get beyond video meetings, and you start to say, okay, now I need to get into calling environments, and especially companies that are multinational. How do I get into the international calling situation, and how do I facilitate that? How do I get into contact centers, as we mentioned? Even how do I handle my network? Like, how do I handle my wide area network, and how does that get connected out, and how does that reach out into people's home networks, and how do we optimize that, and what does that mean for virtual private networks, for VPNs? So it becomes a more complicated thing as you get into the different parts of the overall unified communications world. And that's where I think people are embarking on now, right? They've kind of got the basic stuff figured out, and now it's going into the deeper end of the pool, so to speak, to figure out how some of these other things happen.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned calling environments there. Voice. It feels like an old traditional channel now. We've got all these other things. We were talking before we came on about a popular social media application, which is another means of communication. But in terms of voice and the future of voice, what's that going to look like from your perspective?
Yeah, I think the desire of people to communicate verbally isn't going to go away. I think voice has been fused with video, so people really are much more comfortable now turning on their video and having conversations that way. But I think that you're always going to want to be able to make and receive calls to your customers, to your business partners, to your employees. So it's how do you get your business connected to everybody and everything? And voice is sort of it's the bedrock kind of foundational technology, right? I mean, when VoIP might fail and video might fail and all these other systems might fail, the good old public switch telephone network, the PSTN, usually always works. So being able to make and receive voice calls, I think, is still gonna be a thing that's going to be relevant for a long, long time in the future. The one thing that I didn't think would ever happen for a while, but I think is going to happen now, is the demise of the handset. I think the actual physical phone, I think
Finally,
this might
finally, the
finally
handset's
be.
going to die.
Yeah, this is the nail in the coffin. I think it's we're talking to VoIP connections, we're putting on headsets, we're using our mobile devices more. That actual physical handset on a desk. Even though I have one sitting right over here, nice Cisco product, but I just don't know that people are going to use them as much as they used to.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. So, look, Marcus, it's been really, really great speaking to you. Thank you for joining me. And for those viewers at home, we've been talking about the latest research to come out of Intrado. It's fascinating research, full of lots of insights in terms of the communications market, what's happening, what's coming, and how those IT managers are really view their communication stacks going forward. If you want to have a look at that research, we'll put the link in the description. If you like today's video, don't forget to give us a like and a share across social media. Without further ado, though, Marcus, thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you, David. It was great to be here.
And we'll see you next time. My name's David Dungay, and you've been watching UC Today.